Now, the Constitutional Court has granted a partial victory to independent candidates, easing their path to elections by reducing the signature threshold to 1,000 or 15% of local support. The court, however, did dismiss the independent candidates' bid for a different voting system. This decision reinforces the current electoral framework, ensuring a ballot paper in the upcoming election will feature both independent candidates and political parties, providing voters with diverse choices. Joining us to unpack this ruling in greater detail is political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng. Asanda, always a pleasure. A good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Asanda, we're calling this a partial victory. I think you can just help us understand why it is a victory in some aspects, but of course not in the most complete form that we could see it.
Well, I think, the Constitutional Court has ruled that independent candidates only need 1,000 signatures versus the 15% of the constituency which was required before. And this would have led to some candidates needing 10,000, sometimes up to 14,000 signatures in order to be able to stand for election, which was really just too much of a cumbersome situation or burden to place on independent candidates, considering that political parties didn't have the same requirement. So this is the part where this is a victory, that only 1,000 signatures are going to be needed, which should be fairly easy to get, compared to 10,000 or even 14,000. But where one would say that there wasn't really a victory is in that right now, as things stands, the way that the system is set up is that you need only 200 seats are basically available for independent candidates, and while political parties actually have an opening and can gain up to the full 400 seats. And this is what was being challenged, that it's not fair that political parties get to essentially have the potential to be voted for in all 400, while independent candidates only are really restricted to the 200. But the court decided that actually they were going to allow that particular rule or limitation to stand. And the reason for this is because in order for us to continue and to be able to respect proportional representation, you would need that. And I think that, initially, I also was like, it is a little bit unfair that, you have political parties who have 400 seats potentially, while independent candidates are only, allowed the 200. But, when I thought about it further, I realized that, if we understand South Africa's history, then we will understand that, we are a very diverse country. And the reason why our political system focuses on proportional representation rather than first past the post, or a situation which the independent candidates will put us in, which is like you need people to vote for a particular individual and they will get the votes, whereas the political party system allows that people vote for a political party, and then certain individuals from that political party will be allowed to be represented. So the political party system does in some ways lead to us having a much bigger diversity of voices represented in terms of a kind of a bulk, or in terms of a larger number of people's opinions and thoughts. And what it also does is that it has created a stable political system where the independent political system, the independent candidate system, can be quite unstable, because if one person is voted in, it means if that person dies, it means if anything happens to that person, they get sick, they can no longer fulfill their duties, you have to go to a by-election because that seat will now become vacant. Whereas in the political party system, if the candidate dies, then the political system merely puts in the next person in line. And so to put it at 200, to restrict it to 200 means that they're taking only half the risk rather than taking the full risk, as I've said. And I think that the other consideration was really, as I said, around creating a mixed system rather than a single system, because the electoral amendment wasn't about moving from proportional representation to a system of independent candidates. It was about creating a system that allows independent candidates to be voted in, while also allowing those within the party political political system to also be able to participate. And so what we have now is a mix. And I think that what we're likely to see is perhaps after 5 years of this mixed system, we'll be able to see what the pitfalls are, we'll be able to see what the issues are, and then after that, the independent candidates presumably will be in a better position to go back and argue at the Constitutional Court why they think, that system should be changed, or even the political parties will be able to go to court and argue that the system should be changed, to favor more political parties and proportional representation, or whatever the case may be. But I think what's critical for people to understand is that it is important that we have independent candidates, because one of the biggest issues in South Africa is that people said that, they vote for X political party, that political party puts in the candidate, but the political party doesn't then remove the candidate when the people no longer want the candidate there. And so people were able to hide behind the political system and be ineffective and not represent their constituencies. And so the independent candidature system was brought in so that you have more of a kind of direct representation. So we vote for the person that we want to be in power, rather than we vote for the party who then decides who the best candidate for that particular position in that particular area is going to be. And so it's going to be interesting to see how, the mixed system works, and we will begin to see the pitfalls of both systems, which will help us make better decisions for the next election.
What we also heard, Asanda, is an issue of avoiding a frivolous contestation. I'm wondering what that would look like in a democracy such as ours. What would make an individual, contesting an election something that is frivolous?
Well, I think that what they were referring to was the first part, where they wanted to set the bar high in terms of the signatures that you were going to get, because you don't necessarily, you want everybody technically to have the ability to stand for election, but you also don't want the whole of South Africa's 66 million people now standing to become independent candidates, because from a practicality perspective, it's simply not possible to administer an election where you have 66 million candidates, just for exaggeration's sake. And so I think what they wanted to do was to create a system that allows, people who have serious commitment and who are interested to be able to stand, but to also kind of create some limitations so that you don't have candidates who simply, you don't want it to become like the lotto, where anybody, anywhere, anyhow, can just simply throw their hat in. And we know, in a more serious note, we know in South Africa that one of the things that's happening is that with high unemployment, many people look to the political system in order to be able to basically be employed. And so you don't want candidates who are simply in the political system because they just don't have a job and they want a job. And so that 1,000 signatures is important, because you need 1,000 people who can stand behind this person to say, we believe this person is a leader and we want this person to be in leadership, because that allows you then to see that this person actually has support. So you're not going all the way to the election, printing their name, having, these systems in place, only to find out, at election that this person didn't even get one vote, or they only got 2 votes. So you want this person to at least be almost guaranteed 1,000 votes. Of course, it's still not 1,000 votes technically. Yeah. It's more like 1,000 pledges, but it's much better to have 1,000 pledges than to just have this lotto system where anyone can just try their hand at being a politician, which would be an absolute disaster, as we've seen.
Well, Asanda, it's been a pleasure understanding this from your perspective. Thank you so much for your time. And I think we'll be in touch as we lead closer to that 2024 election. That was political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng.